Cater, a 25-year-old American, had just been hired by a large corporation in the city. It was a company that dealt with big money, and everyone wanted to work there. The office building was shiny and modern, with large windows that looked out over the city skyline. Everything seemed perfect at first. The first week was normal. Ethan met his new co-workers, people who were professional, but also a little too secretive. They smiled but didn't share much. At lunch, they didn't talk much about their personal lives, and the conversations always seemed to avoid any serious topics. The head of the company, Mr. Malachi, was a tall, stern man with sharp eyes. He often seemed to be watching Ethan a little too closely. It was as though he knew things about Ethan that he had never told anyone. Ethan felt a bit uncomfortable, but he pushed the thoughts away. After all, this was the job of a lifetime. He had to succeed. As the days went on, Ethan began to notice something strange. His colleagues were always very careful about what they said. They would never talk openly about their work, even when no one else was around. And if anyone asked about certain projects, their responses were always vague. One afternoon, Ethan's curiosity got the better of him. He overheard a conversation between two co-workers, Lisa and Brian, who were sitting in the break room. They were talking in hushed voices. "I heard Ethan is digging too deep into the project," Lisa said, glancing over her shoulder. "We need to be careful." Brian replied, "He's already too far in. He'll never get out once the company takes him." Ethan's heart skipped a beat. What were they talking about? Ethan decided to investigate. The next day, he went into the office early, planning to snoop around. He entered the storage room where old documents and files were kept. There, he found a locked file cabinet, and inside, papers labeled Project Watcher. Ethan knew that this project wasn't just a business deal. It was something much darker. He started reading through the papers. The more he read, the more he realized that the company wasn't just focused on money. They were involved in illegal activities, blackmail, and cover-ups. The project they were working on wasn't a business initiative. It was about controlling people. But there was more. The company had been sacrificing employees to keep the business running smoothly. Those who were too close to discovering the truth were quietly disposed of, vanishing without a trace. Ethan's heart raced. They had to be watching him. That night, Ethan received an unexpected call. The voice on the other end of the line was familiar, but strange. It was Mr. Malachi. "I see you've been looking too deeply. You should have left things alone, Ethan." Ethan's mind raced. "What do you mean? What's going on?" Malachi's voice dropped lower. "You've learned too much. The company's plans are bigger than you can imagine. You're next." Before Ethan could respond, the call ended. next day, things were different. Ethan was called into a meeting with Mr. Malachi and several others from the company's leadership team. They sat in a small, dimly lit room, with shadows falling across their faces. Ethan was offered a promotion, a high-paying position that would change his life forever. But something felt off. Malachi leaned in close, his voice soft but deadly. "You know too much, Ethan. You're part of this now." Before Ethan could react, he got unconscious. Ethan woke up hours later in a dark room, not in his office, but somewhere else. His hands were tied, and he could feel dirt beneath him. He was buried alive. But there was no dirt above him, only the feeling of being trapped in a cold, dark space. Ethan realized that he was in a coffin-like room, somewhere deep underground. It wasn't a grave, but it felt just like one. He could hear muffled voices outside, faint laughter and whispers. They were mocking him. Then the truth hit him. The company wasn't just about money. They were running a secret organization that used the sacrifice of their employees to control people's lives. If anyone got too close to the truth, they were removed. Ethan's co-workers were not just employees. They were part of the system. They had all been silenced by the company. Ethan didn't panic. Instead, he thought quickly. He could hear the sound of footsteps above him. He had to find a way out. He used the tools left near him, hidden beneath the ground, to break the locks on his restraints. His hands shook as he managed to escape the room. Slowly, he climbed out, feeling the dirt beneath his fingers. With a final burst of strength, Ethan ran through the underground tunnels, his heart pounding. He knew the truth, and they couldn't allow him to walk free. Ethan ran out into the night, his breath heavy. He could see the lights of the company's headquarters in the distance, but he knew he couldn't go back. He had to expose the truth. But he also knew that if he went public, the company would try to bury him. Again, literally. As he stood outside in the cold night, he saw Mr. Malachi watching from the shadows. "You think you can run, Ethan? You're part of this now. The company controls everything," he said. But Ethan smiled. "Maybe, but I will expose you. People will know what you did." With that, he disappeared into the night, leaving the company's dark secrets behind. Years later, the company seemed to prosper even more. But rumors began to spread. People whispered about the disappearances, the strange happenings in the underground tunnels, and the mysterious deaths that seemed to always happen to those who got too close. But no one ever truly found out what happened to Ethan Carter. Some say he's still out there, watching, waiting for the right moment to reveal the truth.